ahead and get started. We're so glad you guys are joining us for this awesome session that we're about to kick off. Are you guys having a good time at this event? I mean, give it up for She Podcast. This is amazing. I've never been to anything like this with so many women.
So many women. And I recognize half the faces in the room because I've met half of you already.
What's up?
Which has been tremendous. I don't know. This is like the first time we've ever done anything this large. I mean, we've run a lot of Google workshops.
Yeah.
This is very different.
Pretty big. Yeah.
You know, so anyway, we're going to get started because we've only got 45 minutes.
Let's go. Clock.
They're usually 2.5-hour workshops, so.
So get ready for
Get the wrench if you need to pull us off. Please, somebody help. Somebody.
There you go.
So anyway, welcome all of you to the Birk Creative Masterclass, Digital Mindset for Growth. We're going to talk a little bit about leveraging a full digital ecosystem. A lot of us are here, and my guess is that we're probably not leveraging every single tool we possibly can, and we're possibly also not really thinking about what we're doing as a business all the time, and that's probably something that's wrong with me, that I don't think I go through life as a business owner without thinking about my business. Every minute I'm thinking about business.
You live and breathe business, definitely.
I do. Sometimes. I'm a serial entrepreneur. What am I going to say? Before we go on, I really want to just say thank you so much to Jessica and Elsie for this. I mean, they're women founders. Please, can we just give them a round of applause? Because you know what? I mean, 2% of the money in the country goes to women. That ain't nothing. You know, and then if you imagine what doesn't go to black women entrepreneurs, it's even worse. So the fact that they've been able to pull this together and we're all here in solidarity, celebrating each other, is a really, really huge deal. And it's on podcasting, which is even better. So I'm just really grateful for these two women to have done this. I want to just sort of talk about at the very top level that there was a time and a place where a lot of the online tools that you're experiencing, that you're using right now, were only available for large brands like McDonald's and Toyota. I mean, really, like there was a time when those are the only people that had access to advertising and to get information out to the public or to try to find a customer. And those days are over. I mean, a lot of the things that are available for us to use now are very disruptive. I mean, we have the power to communicate and to reach people in ways that were never, ever possible until now. So this is a great time to be alive because we're just blowing stuff up. I mean, a lot of large companies are afraid of the power that we have. And at the moment, you know, podcasting is a free, open thing. I mean, nobody's making it go away. I mean, I'm a musician, and they pretty much locked down the distribution process for releasing albums. You know, I mean, you just can't really, it's hard to do it now. There was a time when anybody could do it. Now it's hard. But podcasting, that hasn't happened. So realize that you have a lot of power. Whatever you're doing with your business, you have a significant amount of power to make change.
So we're going to start this session off with a guiding question, and I know it seems really obvious, but it's always good to level set so we understand the context that we're coming from. So ask yourself this: what does it mean to be positioned for growth in 2019? Positioned for growth, and we put a $sign in parentheses because really at the end of the day, this is about, well, how do you make more money? It might not look like that right now, but ultimately creating something sustainable means, can I fund this? Is there money here? Is there something that can make this a living thing? And the answer is really to think about your podcast as a business. It's a fun thing that comes from a place of passion, but when you start only thinking about your podcast as an actual business, it really changes the way you think about everything from your content to your marketing to your branding to even the language that you use when you're describing your podcast to other people.
So just really briefly, I have a very long history. I've been in business for about 20 years. I started my company back in the day when money was flowing very easily, and it was really easy to get meetings and to talk to people, get at the table, get through a door. It's a lot different now. There's multiple ways to do it. My company, Birk Creative, has been around for 20 years. I'm also the co-host of the Honest Field Guide podcast, which is, you can see we're really sporting our branding everywhere possible. I'm also a Google digital coach. So in 2014, my company was tapped by Google to try to help them understand how can we reach women-owned businesses? What do we need to do? What are they talking about? What does it sound like? And I was like, oh, well, I'm perfect for that because I have all the answers for you. Trillion-dollar company, they're not on the street, they're not in the communities. It's very difficult for companies like that to really meet one-on-one with us. So I helped them. I was one of the collaborating architects to create the Google Digital Coaches program. I'll have materials after this workshop to share with you. Depending on what state you're in, we have a Google Digital Coach in a lot of the major urban metropolitan areas. We just opened an office in Harlem, actually, which is really exciting with a partnership with Chase Bank. I'm also the founding member of the Jewish Black Business Alliance. It's an alliance that's based and built on the advocacy of Jews during the 40s that were advocating for blacks during Jim Crow. And so we've actually switched the conversation a little bit from the civil rights piece to the economic justice piece, and it's specifically working in Chicago. I'm also a songwriter. I have a band called Utah Carol, so I've been making music for quite a while. My husband and I have 3 records. I have a book publishing company, and I'm also on the founding board member of the Women in Entrepreneurship Institute in Chicago. Are any DePaul graduates here? DePaul University? See how it is?
Damn,
what's with Chicago? Okay, I love Chicago. I love Chicago. Is this being live streamed? I'm from Chicago. Who's from Chicago? Yes.
All right.
Thank God. Okay, thank God. Okay, I mean, I love Atlanta. This is my first time here. But anyway, you should definitely check out the Women in Entrepreneurship Institute. We just have an accelerator. We're giving money away. It's really amazing. And I already talked about Google Digital Coach.
And I'm sure there are entrepreneurship institutes all over, especially wherever you're from. So please seek those things out.
Not for women. No.
Women. So search them out, seek them out wherever they are, because they're definitely looking for you. My name is Esther Ikoro. I'm the co-host of the Honest Field Guide podcast. I'm a content creator, and I hate using the word storyteller because it's really overdone. But what I really do is I help our clients understand how to speak directly to their audience through stories. That comes in the form of photos, videos, community building. And so I do consider myself a community builder, also a stand-up comedian, as JinJa would tell you. I crack on her all the time. Yes. I'm on the community development board of the Acorn Theater and a couple of other things. I just help people from a community organizing perspective understand how to gather and set a table so that the right people can come and be empowered and then go out into the world and do more and amplify what they're doing. Now, let's see if this video works, because this is an intro. This is actually episode 2. We are way past episode 2, but I love this.
So far beyond this episode.
If it plays, it gives you an idea of the vibe.
Does it work? Can you play
of our
it?
podcast. Let's see.
I didn't do that. We'll see what happens. They have to press play.
The Marriott's internet is free.
What'd you say?
It's free. So
it's free? Oh, what's that complaint about free?
And we're the host of the Honest Field Guide podcast.
Entrepreneurship is no joke. The journey is full of anticipation, failure, hope, and disappointment. You'll make money and be totally broke at the same time.
The Honest Field Guide podcast tells you the truth.
We know being an entrepreneur is crazy hard, and you will sometimes cry at dinner. Listen in to be inspired, laugh, and learn how to really thrive on your business journey. Just 1 second. We got one more thing.
On this episode of the Honest Field Guide, stories from the front lines, how to chase your dream. Okay, JinJa.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so this is a topic we can, I think, cut the...
I had to do this.
This is weird to be a podcast, and I absolutely hate the sound of your voice. I'm like, why are you putting me through this? Cut this off. Jesus. So let's go through...
Well, I mean, the reason we wanted to present that is because that's a full brand experience. So we're actually incorporating our music, our visuals, our message, our voice, and we have the same intro everywhere. And this is sort of the intro that we even use when we're talking about our podcast as a marketing tool for the business, which is Birk Creative. So we don't even have really a standalone podcast. We'll talk a little bit about it later. But today we're going to really talk about these things. We're going to talk about how to brand your business with books, which Esther has behind her, posters, other materials like a business, like a big brand does. That's what they do. We want to do the same thing. Creating some visual branding for your podcast. And we're going to talk about basic digital marketing strategies. Overall, 10,000-foot view ecosystem stuff, not very specific. This is not an Instagram workshop, although we do run those. We're going to talk a little bit about how to Google up your business, not too much because there's a lot of stuff to do on Google, and I'm happy to talk to people at the end of all the workshops about Google if you want more information. I do have some printouts. All right, so first off, protecting your brand. This is something that we take for granted. We have an idea, we're passionate, we love it, we want it, we got to get it out there, and we do it before really thinking about it as a business space. We're thinking about it as an emotional space. So one of the things that I've discovered over time working with large brands is that people come up with stuff and they don't even do a basic Google search first of their name, to see what the competition is or to see if somebody else has trademarked or branded it. So something really important to do is to do that first. And if you have a name and you find out later that it's something that's taken over by somebody else, you might have to rethink of your name, or you potentially might have to just go ahead and use it and see what happens, which people do all the time. And I'm sure some of you might be doing it because I kind of think we are about some things. Be careful about speaking into the public until you know that you have it. I mean, an example would be Blue Ivy, Beyonce. or even higher ground, which now we're finding out, somebody else has the name higher ground, so the Obamas now have to go up in court and try to get their name. So think about things like that. Make sure you're securing all your top-level social media channels. A lot of us forget to do that. Even if you're not going to use Pinterest, please get pinterest.com/mypodcastname. Just hold it, park it, and put it aside. This is what large businesses do. There's a case with Verizon. Somebody did not secure their names, and somebody else took Verizon.net. They had to go to the Supreme Court and get them all back, and they had to pay to make it happen. So these things are real, and now that we're in a space of digital expansion, everything that you're doing is up for grabs and completely, takeable by somebody else to have it. Another thing to think about is to make sure that you're securing your name with a domain registrar. Some of us don't do that. So if you're in a position that you can actually send your podcast to somebody else, or someone wants to acquire your business, they want to know that they can get it very easily. So these are the kinds of things you think about. Don't believe that what you're doing is not valuable for someone else to get or to use. We've had offers for people to partner or buy the company. We're having people asking about sponsorship, and it's really because we have our IP protected. It's very important to do that, and there's plenty of sources online to make that happen for yourself.
So let's talk about brand identity. So when we talk about protecting your brand assets, your digital assets, we're also talking about protecting everything that's associated with the brand identity. So the name is an obvious idea. If you're like, I know a perfect name for this podcast about XYZ, a lot of people have probably thought of that perfect name for that. Logos are also included in this. Also included are things like your tagline and brand promise, calls to actions, all of those things that when you interact with your favorite brands or your favorite podcasts that you say, this is what makes me think of this brand. Best believe that there's a brand identity document where all of those assets belong and all of those assets are protected, so someone doesn't say, that's a really great tagline, I think I'm going to use that for my XYZ that you don't want to be associated with.
And these are really important to think about, because when you're creating sort of an ego vanity journey, which a lot of us do when we're using our voices and we're out there talking because we love what we're saying, we have a lot of expertise, we believe in what we're sharing, you still have to kind of push that back a little bit and say this is a business, and you have to think about ways to make it look like one. We are in a performance culture. Everybody knows that, right? I mean, there's a lot of lies out there. But none of us are here because we're podcasters and we're authentic. That's why we're podcasters. We're very authentic. So think about what it means to be online. And the reason I have considered some automation there is because this gets really overwhelming. There's so much to do and there's so much to choose from. What do you do? There are some things you can automate very easily, and you can take a look online at what it would look like to automate your social media, for example. Social media requires a lot of resources and a lot of information. But just generally speaking, advertising, just let me bucket this right now. Google, Facebook, Twitter, these are trillion-dollar companies, and they have shareholders. They have people that pay money, and they have people that have stock in their companies. What does that mean? That means that if you're using these channels and you're not spending money on advertising, you're not going to get the attention you deserve. Unless you're already well-known and you have someone like Oprah, like Jill has promoted her book, no one's going to find you. No one's going to really know who you are, and no one's going to see you because you're basically competing for attention at this point. It's not about competing for another podcaster, but you're competing against The Gap. You're competing against McDonald's. So you have to spend money on advertising. It's very painful to think about, but you've got to do these things. Blogging, we all do blogging, so that's something that's important. You can blog on LinkedIn. You can blog on your website. You can blog on someone else's blog. You can write articles real easy. Social media, we talked about that. Your website is really critical. Having Google Analytics backed up behind your website is critical for these kinds of things because you can then determine the kinds of people that are coming to your website, right? And then, of course, your content is king. All of us are all about content. I do workshops. Esther and I do workshops all the time. People do not have the skills and the power that we have as podcasters. They do not know how to write. They do not know how to talk. They do not know how to communicate effectively. We all know how to do this. So you guys already have that down pat. And all of these things combined are being online. Just putting all your eggs in one basket on one channel is a recipe for disaster when you are a business. And again, a reminder, we're talking about how to start changing your mindset and then thinking about what you're doing as a business experience. It's a business process. In the bathroom talking to some woman that you haven't met before, make sure that you're not just having a conversation about the awesome shoes he's having. I mean, legit, talk about your business. I've gotten customers this way. This happens all the time. We're not on the golf course. We're not, guys.
You're not.
I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Who golfs? Okay, fine.
There you go. That was.
Not you.
That was.
Did that land bad?
Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
That's what I'm here for, folks. Problematic light is on. So using your identity to create a living ecosystem online. So this is a really great example, last name basis I love. So a living ecosystem, like JinJa says, is really comprises like things like your website, whether you're using Squarespace, Facebook, video podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, all of these things where depending on where a person is in their journey throughout the day or what their lifestyle is like or what their schedule is like, they're going to have different moments and different ways that they want to interact with your content, right? After you listen to a podcast and they say, I'm going to post a picture of this on my LinkedIn or Twitter, and you want to go extend your experience with that brand. So having those things already in place so that people can interact with you in different ways is really important to help create a living ecosystem for your brand. So your brand feels alive and it doesn't just feel one-dimensional. This is also helpful when you get featured on things, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but when we talk about positioning yourself for growth, it's really making sure that anything that someone needs, whether they want to promote you, whether they want to interact with you, whether they want to feature you, those things are already there for them to feed from and to amplify.
Absolutely.
So podcasting is great because you're already good at talking, right? You already have like kind of the core of what your content is going to be. But some of the biggest challenges that our clients talk about is that they don't know what type of content they need to share. It's like, I have this podcast like 30 minutes to an hour long, but you're telling me I need an Instagram. You're telling me I need a YouTube. You're telling me I should be on Twitter. And I don't know what that content looks like because all I do is audio, right? So visual content is anything along the lines of film, video, graphics, anything that's a visual aspect that you can add to your audio or that you can add to enhance your audio or extend it. So just a good way to think about this is take any brand that you enjoy that has any sort of audio associated with it. I don't care if it's a promotional thing for some shoes that you like. There's audio, there's music to it. Think about the visuals that are associated with that and what that might look like if you do that for your podcast. So this is where we started.
Oh my God, I love it. It's so crazy.
It's crazy.
How did we get here? What are we doing up here?
A trail of cheers. I don't know. So a couple of gems from this. So this is a screenshot of our podcast from when we first started our visual journey and a screenshot of our podcast page, our Instagram, and our visuals really recently. And as you can see, things have changed a lot. One of the biggest pitfalls I think that we as creatives, and especially we as women make, is that we feel like we can't put anything out until it's absolutely perfect. And perfection
oh my God, stop that right now.
kills
stop.
progress.
Perfection kills progress, especially for women. And we're not progressing fast enough, so cut it out.
Yeah, and I know that we've talked about things like, I mean, that's
Please,
true.
Thank you.
It's true.
Yes.
It's not realistic. And I know we've talked about things like protecting your brand assets, but what I really don't want you to think is that everything has to be crispy and perfect before you move forward. So as you can see, we thought our brand was going to look one way when we first started, right? Like I was doing the visuals. We thought we knew exactly, okay, this is the package. We secured those things. And then as our brand identity evolved, as our podcast evolved, and we started incorporating different aspects of business development, like having guests like Jason Tremieux in the middle from Facebook and Grammy-Award winning artist Tina Clark right there in the bottom center. As we started integrating more of those things, we started thinking, well, do these visuals really match up? Like, how do we want to change things? Do we want to, like, highlight independent artists? So your brand and your visuals, all of that stuff is going to be evolving, and that's totally okay. Like, there is not really a major brand whose branding and marketing looks exactly the same as it did when they first started. So this is an example of how we've evolved. Yeah, but they still have, different faces and stuff. There's differences.
Sorry, not trying to
Why
call
are you
you
doing
out.
this right now?
I'm just saying, I mean, this is what we do, but I want to also mention,
You know what I'm
too,
saying. Why
the
did you
thing
do
that
this?
is really important about what we're doing is, and this is because we have a brand strategy company, but we're always focused on the customer all the time. And so in the context of our podcast, which is the marketing tool for the business, so the business makes the money, the podcast is a thought leadership platform for us. So just as a side note, for some of you that have a business, you could think about creating a podcast from your business. Not having a standalone business that's not related, because you have expertise in your business, and that could be part of your podcast platform. So some people just have a podcast, and that's fine. But for those of us that are consultants or consulting agencies, think about the place of strength that you have and the knowledge you have, and use it to your best. So there's a woman in the audience right now. Her name is Keela. She has a podcast called called Fish Food. Her business is Little Fish Accounting. So Little Fish Accounting, I mean, she has expertise in this. She knows what she's talking about. So she released a podcast, and now she's using it for thought leadership, which is how I found her. But what I also want to mention is our podcast visuals are never about us. They're always about the person we're talking to. So that's why when you're looking at our visuals, we don't really care what we look like. I mean, I think you're gorgeous. I'm gorgeous. We're gorgeous, whatever. Well, I know there's one picture of me, but it's not really about me. But I mean, I look pretty good there. It's not bad.
Not bad.
Not
bad,
both
those pictures.
A little bigger than I was like a month ago, but whatever. Okay. So audience focused.
So this is really about audience focused branding and marketing, and that actually takes some of the pressure off of thinking about how you need to look perfect and how you need to look polished and look like Beyonce all the time. You don't have to, because really the value of the stuff that you're saying in your podcast is that it's very audience specific. I mean, the internet is a place of niches, and we all know that because we're at a podcast conference where people are doing podcasts about the most niche things. And I talked to someone who's like a birthing coach, and I was like, this is interesting. So, you can find your niche on the internet, and then the content that you create around that niche is what's going to make your content stand out. A great example of this is Flowers for Dreams. Flowers for Dreams is a beautiful flower arrangement and delivery company out of Chicago. I know what you're thinking. It's really easy to take beautiful pictures of flowers, but because it's really easy to take beautiful pictures of flowers,
it's a trap.
Everyone takes beautiful images of flowers. You know how many flower companies and bouquet companies are in the world? A lot. Flowers for Dreams, even though they ship nationwide, they do a really good job of branding and visual storytelling in a very place-specific way. So they ship all over the country, but you know that they're from Chicago just based on the types of visuals and the types of stories that they tell.
Although, when I was in Mountain View, they were out there during my experience as the Illinois.
All over. But they're like a homegrown Chicago super proud brand. So when you think about storytelling and visual storytelling around the snippets of your podcast that you're going to share and what images are going to share, think about what community you're trying to build and the language and the signals and the flags that let people know that this is their tribe. And don't be afraid to lean into that.
And your audience, too. I mean, they were out there because of their consistent brand presence online. I mean, they wouldn't have been at, in Mountain View, right, representing their state if it wasn't for that. So one of the things to think about, and we coach companies on this all the time, try to figure out how to frame what you're doing in a business context. Sometimes saying I have a podcast sounds a little bit like I'm a graphic designer and I, design out of my basement. I'm a freelancer. I mean, I charge $25 an hour. So try to elevate your conversation around your podcast as a business. This takes some practice. It gets into conversations around how do you answer your phone about your business? How do you talk about your business on the bus? What are the kinds of things you're putting on social that make it look like you're bigger than you are? Because people do, when they're running a business anyway, they want to look larger than they are. I mean, my website, Birk Creative, I have a phone number on there which doesn't go to my personal line. I look like I have a lot more things going on than I actually really do. Don't tell anybody.
There's a lot going on
here. Can you delete that?
There's a lot going on.
I mean, you got to look like you're a business. So think about your language. Pay attention to how you're speaking your truth out loud.
And don't be afraid to have a script. Right?
Yes,
so I don't know how many of you guys came to the booth 210, what's up, and heard my spiel about Birk Creative and the Honest
She's a rock
Guide
star.
podcast.
I think I trained her really well. No, just kidding.
I did. So really the important part about having a spiel, or at least writing it down and practicing it, is that it helps you contextualize what you're doing and you know that you're hitting all the main points first. It also makes it so that when someone walks up to you and is like, you have a podcast, you're not like, it's about this. So I'll give you just a brief example of the spiel that I gave that some of you already heard. So welcome to our booth. This is Birk Creative. We're a brand strategy and managing consulting company. We've worked with large tech clients like Google, YouTube, and Facebook, and Apple. And this podcast is our company podcast. It's kind of like our equivalent to a white paper, right? So we talk to people both inside of corporate machines like Jason Tremieux, the head of supplier diversity at Facebook, about things like how they find small business owners to fit into their supply chain. But we also talk to creative entrepreneurs such as the brand manager at Slutty Vegan and Grammy-Award winning artist Tina Clark. And really it's our way of sharing the knowledge we've gained from 20 years of working with these companies and working in the creative field with small business owners. I don't usually talk that fast, but the clock is ticking. You get what I'm saying, though, right?
Let's give her an applause. Oh, my God.
When you practice
I'm so excited. I want it.
It starts to feel more natural, and you make sure that people are like, because people came up and they're like, you have this banner, but you also have this banner. It says Google, and it's about how can I contextualize what we're doing for you as quickly as possible so you know what value you can gain from what we've been working on. Practice makes perfect. I used to be in sales, so I'm used to it.
I'll always be selling.
Always
be selling, always be learning,
always be creative.
Always be creative. So, all right, we're going to switch gears a little bit because I'm guessing, how many of you have a YouTube channel for your podcast?
Good job. Wow.
Congratulations.
There's usually like one tiny hand in the air.
That is astonishing. You know what? That's the difference between podcasters and regular entrepreneurs. I swear to God.
About that life.
We never get hand raises about YouTube channels.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't ever happen. So that's amazing. So most of the people that raise their hand already know this answer. But for those that didn't, there are two big differences. And I'm going to talk about the YouTube space because Google is one of our largest clients, and I know a lot about that, and YouTube's a client. Esther's going to talk about Instagram. But basically, YouTube is a global space. Does anybody know what the #1 search engine in the world is?
Good job.
Yes, lovely. Does anybody know what the second largest search engine in the world is?
There you go.
YouTube. Most people don't even know that, but it is. It's a totally different search engine. It's a totally different, there's different algorithms underneath YouTube, and I have strategies around that. But basically, it's public. You don't need to opt into it. You just show up and you do something. You put it out there, and everybody can access it as long as you're using the right strategies that include a lot of hashtags and keywords and things like that. It's easy to tape yourself, obviously. It's the same with Instagram, but it's much easier with YouTube. You just load up your video, and boom, it's done. You can monetize on YouTube once you get to a certain amount of people. You can't monetize yet on Instagram. And the main thing that's kind of changed about YouTube, which I think is really cool, you can actually broadcast live from YouTube, keep it private, and then you can edit it and then re-release it to the public. So we had an opening party for Jessica and Elsie at Google Atlanta on Wednesday, and we YouTube lived it, and we haven't edited it yet, but we're going to. But it was really exciting because I just thought, wow, Facebook requires you to log in. But YouTube, you just put your stuff out there. And we have a slide later that will show because we actually have all of our content on YouTube as well. Instagram.
Yeah, so Instagram, you have to sign into Instagram. It's kind of like a walled garden in the sense that you don't really have the same amount of access to your followers as you do. It's a great place to experiment. It's also a low cost of entry. There's also video on there, as you know, right? So video is just over-indexing in general. So whether you're on YouTube or you're on Instagram, it's really important to understand that most people are going to watch a video before they look at a picture. That's just what the data says.
Here's a trick that Esther has come up with, which is really interesting, because Facebook's one of our largest clients as well. So she does Instagram posts, and she makes some videos, but they're not actually moving, but they're actually videos, so it gets higher results on Instagram because of that.
I don't know.
So consider that. So consider that really, I mean, Instagram wants more video. There's a war out there with the tech companies, and if videos what all the kids are watching, which is where the money is going to be coming from eventually, the young people, they want to be in on the game. So think about using more video on your Instagram and less static images. Okay, calls to action, brand consistency, creative content, and more. So this is really important. So there's a couple of examples we're going to show of branding done right, and we have way more examples than this, but we don't have that much time. So there's a woman here now. Periscope.
Sarah.
It's really exciting. So we had a contest at Google this week with Jessica and Elsie, and we wanted to find a way to award a scholarship to somebody to come to this conference. And so Google Digital Coaches works with women of all ethnicities, but particularly underrepresented small business owners. And so we're like, this is an expensive conference. We need to issue an award. So we had an award for this, and we had looked at all the people that submitted on our form, why they wanted to come to the She Podcast Conference, and we looked at everybody. And this podcast right here, Periscope, you should check it out. Did a search on Google. That was the first place I started. She's covering like the first 20 hits. All over the social media. Her website is tight. It's beautiful. Calls to action on the website.
Calls to action.
Her visuals are gorgeous. And you hit a button, and her stuff plays off the website right away. No delay. So she's actually our scholarship recipient for Google Digital Coaches. Where are you? Please stand up. Congratulations. Google Digital Coaches Program, great branding. We have a call to action right off the bat. Watch now. Think about what your channels are saying to you. Do you have a call to action? Get to it right away. Give someone something to do. Nobody's looking for a resume. They want an action right now. Jennifer Hurwitz, met her a couple nights ago. Right off the bat, I thought, let me think about this. Hey, Jen, where are you? Oh, she's here.
What's up, Jen? Hey there.
So great brand, on point all the time. Again, I didn't really look at her podcast. I wanted to see how she represented online. So I typed her name in. She's the first 2 or 3 pages on Google image search.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
Huge
She's
deal.
taking care of her brand online. This is how you make a business for what you're doing. This is how you do it. This is what it takes. You meet people where they are. You don't know where they are. So you get yourself everywhere. That's really important. And for us, proof of being in business, put a YouTube page. How about this? There's a huge audience of people that do not listen to podcasts, but they're all over YouTube. Put your podcast on YouTube. Absolutely. And how do we do it?
It's really as simple as having a static image. Like, this is episode 6. Wow, we are so far from this. But this is good because it's an early screenshot when we didn't have as much time to dedicate to this process. What we literally did was we would take the audio from our podcast, a static cover image with the episode name and the podcast name, and that would be the YouTube video. And it's as simple as that. And so then when people put them on playlists and when we'd go to, like, we do talks and we wanted to play them in the background, we had these already queued up images. And now we're at the point of doing video intros and trailers. So,
I mean, it's important because I couldn't pull up iTunes over there, but they pulled up my YouTube video right off the bat. So keep that in mind because it's an open platform. These are just a couple other on-brand. Journey Foods, the first black-owned, woman-owned business that has a food company. She's tremendous. She's branding with color, which is what I do because this is actually my agency color, orange, and I'm wearing orange pants. I almost did my orange Converse, but I didn't do that. There's also a really great Instagram you should follow, Heather Day. So she's completely blown up her brand. She does a lot of Instagram stories, and she tapes for behind the scenes. A great thing for podcasters to do is tape their behind the scenes. And we already do that anyway, but you can take it to the next level and do this on Instagram and other places. She's doing a really great job, and now she's got a big gig with Google. She's doing a lot of Google murals because of this. So I think that what we really need to ask right now, because we're talking about digital mindset in terms of business, this isn't content strategy. This is how do I believe that what I'm doing is a business, because you have to do that first before you can go and understand how to monetize. But no one's going to monetize or sponsor you if you're not showing up like you're worthy of it. It's just the real honest-to-God truth. So why are you doing this? I mean, it's okay if you're doing this for
passion
and you know, release of tension. It's perfectly fine to do that. You know it. That's what you're doing. If it works for you, make it work. I'm in a space that every single thing I do and every single thing that Esther does has to be about driving revenue to my business. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. I just can't. I don't have time. I'm not getting any younger. You know, I don't have time for this anymore. We're running out of time. So think about this.
Literally.
And then also figure out, when you understand why you're doing it, what problems it's solving for other people. You have to understand what that is, because your message should be tailored to that. And then you need to figure out how to measure your success. If you can't measure your success, then you're going to give up at some point. And you should have little tiny goals, right? You shouldn't be thinking, I am trying to get 100,000 subscribers in the next month. Because, you know, unless Oprah puts you on her list like Jill's book.
What up, Jill?
What up, Jill? How will you do that? So, you know, think about things like your audience to help you figure out where to go.
Yeah, and your success can be measured by different things. It could be like, we want to make sure we put out this much content and this consistency with this amount within this amount of time. Like, it can be things like that. It doesn't have to be things like, I want to make sure that all my pictures get X amount of likes, because even the practice of creating that consistency is going to help you really narrow down to the value-adding aspect of your podcast and what's working, what's not working, before you just, like, all of a sudden get 1 million views because you posted up a picture of a puppy.
Please let us have 1 million views. Please, God.
Compelled to do that all the time.
Please.
So these are some simple buckets that we use to help people think about this process of how to meet their customers where they are. So just some things that you can think about is what your customer or your potential listeners or clients are thinking about. I want to watch, I'm into, I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, I want to buy. These are the real basic pillars that we use to create content, that we use to create advertising, that we use to storytell around our brand, and even sometimes pick the type of episodes that we want to record. Oh,
my goodness, absolutely. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down and upload it to the Wova app if I can.
Yeah, let's do that.
Can we do that?
Yeah, that'd be
okay, good. I'm going to make sure to do that. Okay. And then another thing to consider, again, digital mindset for business. Online, you will drown. You will drown on social media. You'll never get out. It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. If you don't have a plan, you might as well be burning money out the window and lighting it on fire and sending it down this long 20,000-foot story staircase that we're in right now at this hotel. So think about these things as you're coming up with a digital marketing plan. Again, this is for people that are deciding, I got a business now, okay? This is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. It is exhausting. But this is what happens when it comes to business, okay? So identify your customer. Why should they choose you? What's your unique selling proposition? Why are you different? There's a zillion healthcare podcasts out there, and I'll tell you, the one that gets the most attention is the one that Pfizer is funding. How do you get seen between all that stuff? What makes you so special? Setting SMART goals and KPIs, and then choosing the right marketing tactics and being consistent. Once you jump in, you can't stop. That's why automation is important. I mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of content around automation. A couple things to also think about with SMART goals. Esther already hit upon a lot of those points already. But SMART goals are specific. I mean, not specific. They're very important. So making it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and tangible. I had a goal once. I said I want to have 5 $250,000 customers the next quarter. And I met with one of my advisors in Chicago, and she's like, do you know how much money it would take for you to manage 5 $250,000 clients? How many employees do you need to do that? I mean, I would try, but she said you're setting yourself up for failure. So make sure that you can do things that make sense and you can achieve for right now, and make the goals small if you need them. So we only have a few minutes left, I was going to say.
This is a really, really important aspect, because I just want to bring home the reason why all of these different pieces that we're putting together are important for you. We had a contract with a really, really large tech client, and their goal was to feature small women-owned businesses all over the country in this huge, huge, huge thing that they were doing. And it was my job to find assets that these women had so that they could feature them on their platform. You will not believe how hard it was to find businesses that were 20, 40 years old that were kicking ass, like totally kicking ass. I was like, I cannot find a good picture of this founder. I cannot find them on Instagram. I literally don't have the assets to feature them, and this is a huge, huge multi-thousand-dollar opportunity for these women who didn't even know that they were going to be featured. So sometimes when we talk about positioning yourself for growth, it's about being ready when the opportunity arrives, because you never know when someone's going to be like, I really like what this girl is doing. I want to feature her. They don't have time to be like, can you go get some good pictures of you so that I can post it? They're going to be like, okay, just find someone else, you know? So that's really, for me, it was kind of heartbreaking, because I loved a lot of those businesses, and some of them were just not positioned to be featured on this major platform.
I mean, women, we have challenges around putting ourselves out there. I mean, podcasters don't really have that challenge, but just generally at scale, women are a little bit more risk averse. We have a lot rolling off of our money. We have children, families, husbands to take care of. Many of us are the breadwinner, but the world would never know that. They would say, you're the breadwinner? Like, yeah. So what does your husband do? I mean, it's always like, what does your husband do?
Husband.
Or if it's not your husband, it's like, well, you're the breadwinner? Where is your husband? I mean, I don't know. You just get a lot of stuff. You had a lot of stuff.
No.
I mean, I'm just saying. It's like, so, one of the things that stops us from moving forward is being, trying to force the confidence to put yourself out there and to not feel scared. We have to stop feeling scared. How are we going to have financial independence if we're scared? And we can't get financial independence as we put our stuff out there online and doing it in a way that's effective. If you need a coach, you can obviously talk to me, but there's a ton of coaches here that have confidence that can tell you and help you, have the confidence to say, I need to make money. And what I'm doing is going to make money, and I'm going to own that, and I'm going to believe in it, and I'm going to find a way to do what I'm doing and make money at it. That's key. It's key. You got to figure that out. It's hard for us. I don't know. Really quickly, there's a new cool thing that YouTube is doing. You can get a video, and this is not a YouTube advertisement. I'm just saying these are like free things, and these are things that are really cheap to help us get out there. I don't need to do this because I have professional videographers that my agency works with, but most of us, if you don't want to spend 15 grand, you can actually get a video, and a YouTuber will show up at your house with their camera. They'll help you write a script, and they'll shoot your video for like $400 of your business. Now, when this thing first launched 2 years ago, when we rolled it out, it was $150.
It's called Smart Shoot. Can you tell people
Smart Shoot. It's called Smart Shoot, and if you type in Smart Shoot YouTube video ad creation on Google search, you'll get the link that'll come to the YouTube part of this, and you'll get the small business video ad. So Smart Shoot is a company, but you don't want to just go to the company. You want to go to this particular resource if you're interested, because this is a partnership with Google, and so they're offering it for really cheap. So highly recommended if you're looking for a way to get an ad about yourself and you don't want to have someone like, Birk Creative come and charge you 15 grand to do it. The last thing is, really quickly, some of us have a listing on Google. This, again, presents credibility to what you're doing. Having a listing for your business means all the difference between someone looking at you and saying they're not real versus being real because you show up. And this is a way to brag about your business. You don't have to, brag, saying it out loud, you can brag online. And bragging online is a silent experience in a way, you know? So you can also get a free website on Google. You don't have money for Squarespace, get a free website. So before we pull out the names of people that won the Google Home Mini and the What Would Jay-Z Do Daily Affirmations book, for those of you that came to our booth, I really want to say that we're at this podcast conference, and I have been making an effort, and so has Esther. Everyone we're talking to, I want to know what their podcast is, and I subscribe on the spot, and then I ask them to subscribe to mine on the spot. So what I'd really like to do is take a minute, please. This is why we're here. Talk to your neighbor and say, what is your podcast? You don't have to have a conversation, and just subscribe right now, just for a minute. Just turn around and say, what is your podcast? Subscribe, because we want subscribers. Can you take a video? This is what it's all about. iTunes, Google Podcasts. Where are the other ones?
Subscribe to our podcast, the Honest Field Guide podcast. No one's staying next to me.
This is actually a good test. I'll tell you why. Because a couple of people I asked to subscribe, or I wanted to subscribe to theirs, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts. So this is actually a good test. Okay. Thank you for that. And so before we pull the names out, I want to know, we have a few minutes left. Happy to take questions. I'm not going to interfere with the next speaker that's coming up. So I'm happy to be available, and Esther's happy to be available later tonight, because now that we're done, I can actually have a glass of wine and not be afraid of the repercussions of that.
I've never been afraid of the
I
repercussions.
love wine. Questions? Anyone? Preguntas? Yes. Jill. I'm sorry, John.
Damn it.
Say Jill.
JinJa. Jen, sorry.
Did I say that, though? Did I actually say
you
Jill
did.
earlier when I was presenting
What's
you?
your question?
Okay, all right, good. Subscribers.
So an excellent way to do that is a tactic that's going to really take some work with your thumbs. Go find YouTube channels that are similar to what you're doing, and go make real comments on those channels and follow those people and interact. It's already in there. It's too late.
What? Oh,
Same as Instagram. All of that stuff is kind of the same. You have to embed yourself in those communities. So if you're not going to pay money for YouTube pre-roll ads, which would be what I would say if you were a client, like let's do pre-roll ads in front of similar videos and make really good creative videos so they can grab attention with a really nice call to action, then you have to go in and do the legwork in the comment section. That's really the only way. Yeah. What about you in the yellow sweater? I met you. Hi. Zoom, Skype, there's a great... She said that she has most of her interviews for her YouTube channel and for her podcast are remote. And so she wanted to know what suggestions and solution suggestions are for people who are doing interview podcasts with remote viewers. There's an excellent booth on the corner that has some software that lets you trigger like remote viewing. So I don't remember what it's called, but someone said Zoom meeting, there's Skype, there's Google Hangouts, shameless plug. Mm-hmm. Cam. So yeah, when we go talk outside, we'll share those resources. And there is a booth here that has that solution.
Yeah, and your question, the lady in the blue or purple, violet. Go ahead. Yeah. I go online. I legit go online. I literally, right off the bat, do a search of the person's name, and I look at how they're presenting. And I definitely look at how they're presenting on Instagram and if they're there or not. So one of the things that we do at Birk Creative is we do a lot of sourcing on Instagram. We source for creative talent, but we also source on Instagram to kind of see what a person's visual aesthetic is. I mean, we are a brand strategy company, so we're really about not only the visual branding, but the message as well. So that's a place that I look for intentionality, mindfulness, thoughtfulness, and creativity, but also respect. But I do go online. I do my diligence there. I don't have time anymore to go to 1,000 events and to go to 1,000, I'm on a lot of boards. I do a lot of philanthropic work,
Case studies are really important. Case studies, and whether those case studies present themselves as videos, but, what is that person doing around thought leadership? To a certain extent, it's hard to get around, doing the homework yourself, too. So it's almost like you have to know enough to be dangerous, and part of that is, like, you have to gather information enough to know what you don't know and know the signals. So really making sure you're embedding yourself in a community of thought leaders so you can say, okay, that kind of sounds right, that doesn't, so case studies, customer reviews, examples of work, those are all really important. And
the last thing I would add to that is, so my agency does a lot of large brand corporate strategy. So LinkedIn is actually a #1 resource that I use, not only to develop a network of women and other business people, but I also look to see what my clients are talking about on LinkedIn. I want to understand what is important to them, because then I could service the client the best. So if I'm looking for other resources like that, LinkedIn is a place, because I know if there's a woman on LinkedIn who's using it effectively and she's in business, that's the woman I want to do business with. Bottom line, period. Yes? Uh-oh. No, but we definitely can talk. I can talk to you about this outside towards the end of the evening, because this is a longer conversation. LinkedIn is my jam, and we actually did a podcast on this because you don't like LinkedIn and I love it. So,
we're going to pick.
Wait, we'll take one more question, then we're going to pick. Does anybody have any additional questions? Okay, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so the question becomes, if you have multiple brands, how do you create sort of a single funnel or some kind of experience that shows that you're the same person, but you have different ideas? And I can talk to you about that offline. But generally speaking, you kind of have to think about everything you're doing in a giant ecosystem, and where's the place that you have the most interaction and engagement, right? So, for example, LinkedIn is a good place to incorporate all of your information. But if you find out that most of your engagement is coming from interaction to your website, then your website should be the portal for you to go to the next several different portals of business, right? So let's pull the cards out, because I don't see anybody with a wrench. Do you?
Huh?
A wrench to pull us off the stage? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so do you want to pull the card?
We're going to
pull we're going to pull the cards, and I'm sorry for whoever brought these other 2 cards up, but the rule was that you had to actually come to the booth and talk to us.
All right, I've got a card.
And this is going, we're going to give away a poster of the Field Guide podcast, which is a brand extension of the brand. So go ahead, what's the name?
So the name is Caitlin Howacote.
You did it.
Thank
awesome.
you, Caitlin.
And I'm so excited because one of the things that we've done to build our community around our podcast is that we're finding artists that we love that are presenting online, and we're bringing them in to help us brand our podcast. So, we have artists that are doing all kinds of cool things. Okay, Esther. The next one is going to be, oh my God, you guys are the bomb.
Robin M. Sales.
So, Robin M. Sales.
Robin.
Yay. We'll get the
Honest Field Guide tote bag.
Oh my God, hey.
Thank you, Robin.
And she and I are going to write an article, aren't we? We're going to write an article. Okay, so
last one.
No, we have 2 more. We have 2 more.
Don't have 2 more.
We have What Would Jay-Z Do, and we have the Google Home Mini. So there's 2 things. We have a Google Home Mini, and we have a What Would Jay-Z Do book of daily affirmations. So which one should we do first? Go ahead, Esther.
Let's do the book.
Let's do the book first. Who's going to get the Jay-Z book of daily affirmations?
Ooh, the perfect property, Julie St. George.
Julie St. George, is she here?
Julie's not here.
She's not here. She cannot win it. Is she here?
Cannot win it.
Okay, next card.
We have
Love it.
Hungry Squared Podcast. Sharon
Hungry
Titus.
Squared? Okay.
Oh, great.
Oh, my God, awesome.
Sharon, you're here. Thank you for being here.
So I have to tell you about this book. Okay, so. Awesome. Oh, my God, I love it. Okay, what would Jay-Z do? Daily affirmations like a Bible for entrepreneurs. And it's analyzed by Quinn Bryant. She's a woman author in Chicago. Check out her website, What Would Jay-Z Do? And, yeah, congratulations. And the last one is a Google Home Mini, courtesy of Google Digital Coaches.
I'm not looking. Okay, Marion Abrams. Damn, Marion.
I love it. Dun, dun, dun,
Okay,
dun.
Jody Kenny. What? That's hilarious.
Awesome! Congratulations, Google Home Mini, courtesy Google Digital Coaches.
All
Welcome.
right, we are going to be in the back answering any
Awesome.
additional questions. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so
This is
much.
so much fun.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming. Thank you.
Really awesome.
been
Let's go
great.
make some money.